Greetings YouTube, welcome back to Sewing for Beginners. In the last video we looked at sewing patterns and how to decode all the symbols. If you missed that, I've left a link down in the description. In this video we're going to learn how to adapt the patterns to fit us better. That includes lengthening or shortening and adjusting between sizes, because none of us are an exact standard size. All patterns come with a size chart showing the length, bust, waist and hip measurement that corresponds with each pattern size. I recommend that you use the pattern size that fits your largest measurement. You can then either adjust the pattern or you can take it in where you need once you finish the garment. So let's get started. We will need a see-through ruler, some tape and a pen. And if you have one, a curved ruler or bendy ruler can come in handy. You will also need a pair of paper scissors. We might also consider tracing our paper pattern, so we can get pattern paper or tracing paper by the roll, which we can use to trace the pattern, keeping the original paper pattern intact. This is useful for if you want to make adaptations to the pattern, and you can do this without worrying about ruining the original. First we'll look at grading between sizes. So for this example, let's imagine that our bust and hips are a size 12, but our waist is a size 10. So we're going to bring the hip and bust into a 10 at the waist. First we need to find the waistline. Sometimes it will be marked on the pattern, but it will usually be the narrowest point along the side seam. We make a couple of marks along this narrow point, about an inch apart. Now we're going to blend the bust and hips into these two marks. Following the contour of the hips, we draw from the size 12 hip into the bottom mark of the waist. And we do the same from the bust to the waist, blending into the top mark. Now we've created a new cutting line, more suited to our measurements. Now what if we're a half size? There's usually 2 inches between sizes, so if your measurement is an odd number, you'll be a half size. So let's take a look. Let's say we're a size 12.5. We measure the distance between the 12 and 14 cutting line. This is about half an inch. So we divide that by 2, which gives us 1/4 inch. So we measure 1/4 inch out from the size 12 cutting line, giving us our new half-size cutting line. And if, for example, our bust size is a regular 14, we can simply blend that into the waist at the 12.5. Sometimes we can get patterns that just come in one size. So let's pretend that this pattern only comes in a size 10, and this time we want to bring the hips down to a size 8. Again, we find our waistline, and we mark our 2 points about an inch apart at the narrowest point. We subtract our measurement from the pattern's measurement. So for example, if the pattern's measurement is 32 and ours is 30, that gives us 2. Now we need to divide that difference by the number of seam edges. On a simple top like this, we just have a seam on each side, and each seam has 2 edges. This top has 2 seams, therefore 4 seam edges. So we divide our 2 inches by 4, that gives us half an inch. So we mark half an inch in from the cutting line at the hip, and blend that into the waist. On many pattern pieces you will find a line where you can lengthen or shorten the garment. These lines are usually found somewhere in the middle of the pattern piece. We can't simply add or subtract from the bottom or top of the garment, because this will skew the overall fit, especially if there are darts involved. Not all patterns come with a line where you can lengthen and shorten, but we can create one of our own. We want to avoid any notches or other markings, and we draw a line across that's perpendicular to the grain line, or in this case perpendicular to the centre front. we want to make sure that this line is in the same place on all corresponding pieces. For example, this is the centre front. I want to make sure to put this line in the same spot on the back piece. To shorten a pattern piece, we need to decide how much we need to shorten it. For this example, I'm going to shorten it by 1 inch. We mark 1 inch up from our line, and we simply fold up this bottom line to line up with the top line. We can then tape that in place, and finally we need to even out this part where we folded up the pattern. We line up the bottom corner of the pattern with the upper part of the pattern and draw in the new cutting line. To lengthen the pattern, we cut out along the lengthen or shorten line. We can take a piece of paper and we tape down the lower part of the pattern. We measure up from the cutting line, however much we want to lengthen the piece. I'm going to lengthen this by 1 inch. We also draw a mark up along the centre front line. Or if your pattern piece has a grain line, draw up from the grain line. We take the top part of our pattern piece and line up the centre line or grain line and the bottom of the piece with the new line we've drawn, and tape it down to the paper. We blend the upper and lower parts of the pattern to make our new cutting line. We cut out along this new line and our piece has been lengthened. We might need to lengthen or shorten a bodice with darts. Some bodice pattern pieces will come with a lengthen or shorten line, but quite often they don't, in which case we can draw our own, staying perpendicular to the centre front or back or grain line, just so long as our line does not interfere with the bottom 2 dots or the dot at the tip, as these are most important for marking out our dart. Halfway between 2 sets of dots would be ideal. With that in mind, we can shorten our bodice like any other piece, drawing a line up the amount we want to reduce, and folding the bottom line up to the top line, taping it in place, and blending in the edges. And to shorten a bodice, we cut out along the line. We tape the bottom part of the bodice to a scrap piece of paper. We draw a parallel line up the amount we want to extend the bodice, as well as drawing up from the centre front or back, or from the grain line. We line up the top part of the bodice and tape it down and blend in the edges. And that's it for this video. Hopefully now you're more confident with adjusting your patterns, and will now end up with garments with a perfect fit. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!